sports note for Saturday, May the 18th. I know I've actually been away for a little bit. I've been on vacation from work. Got a lot of things done here. Had a couple of other ideas here, but just sometimes you just got to unplug. So that's kind of what I did for most of the week. Although I unplugged from most things and then plugged big time into my Nintendo Switch for the better part of the week. But the 2024 Major League Baseball draft takes place in mid-July. Now, it's a little strange that Major League Baseball does this in the middle of the season, but then when you stop and you think about it, basketball does theirs in June. The NHL does theirs in late June. The NFL always does theirs in either. Typically, in recent years, it's been in April. It's been as early as March in some years. But for baseball, it makes a lot of sense because with basketball and hockey, those players may be invited to training camp, but then may be sent down to the minors after just a couple of weeks of conditioning. And also, if you think about it, the Frozen Four and the Final Four are ending in early April, a couple of months before the the NBA playoffs and the Stanley Cup playoffs really come to a head. Teams are really in the stretch run, and the playoff runs haven't even started yet. In football, their regular season ends in middle February. The draft is late April, and then they have off-season training assignments or OTAs in sometime in May. Training camp usually breaks end of June or end of July, early August, and then you've got the preseason. And there's really not much of a minor league system in the NFL. They can go play in Canada. They can actually go play in the indoor leagues. They can play in the new upstart leagues, whether it was the USFL, the XFL, the UFL, etc. But in baseball, you've got the deepest minor league system that there is, and you've also got a multitude of where these players can go. They can actually go back to some of them their high school teams, some of them their college teams. And then you've got 4 or 5 different levels of minor league baseball, and when you look at the first overall picks since the draft started in 1965, which the first ever one was Rick Monday of the Kansas City Athletics, who was a former All-Star. You've also got players such as Harold Baines, who was in the Hall of Fame, drafted first overall in 1977. Of course, Ken Griffey Jr. in 87 in the Hall of Fame. Chipper Jones in 1990. Andy Bennis was an All-Star, drafted first overall in 88. Phil Nevin and Alex Rodriguez. Darren Erstad, Josh Hamilton, Adrian Gonzalez. Joe Mauer was the most recent one elected to the Hall of Fame, and he was taken first overall in 2001. In more recent years, you've seen Steven Strasburg in 2009, Bryce Harper was in 2010, Garrett Cole 2011, Carlos Correa 2012, Dansby Swanson in 2015, Adley Rutschman in 2019. Spencer Torkelson with the Tigers in 2020 looks like he's going to be a very good one, as will his new teammate Jackson Holliday, who was taken first overall in 2022. Now, 2 of the last 3 years, the Pittsburgh Pirates had the number 1 overall pick, and they selected Henry Davis in 2021, and then just last year selected pitcher Paul Skenes. Skenes was the most outstanding player of the 2023 College World Series, where LSU won the College World Series for the 6th time and their first time since 2009. He put together massive numbers. He had a 24-6 career record, 335 strikeouts, 235 innings, had a 2.18 career ERA, and had only transferred into LSU from Air Force for his senior season, and it was no doubt that he was going to be the number 1 pitcher taken off the board. Now, the Pirates selected him first overall, and then he was down in the minors, but each time he was sent all the way down to single A, and then within the course of a week had moved himself up little by little, and his stint in AAA Indianapolis lasted all of maybe a week before the Pirates called him up on May 11th to make his major league debut. Now, Skenes turns 22 on the 29th, and we'll talk more about his age and everything here in a little bit. But he's 6'6", 235. He's a very hard-throwing right-hander. And is routinely able to clock his fastball at least above 98. He's very well known for reaching triple digits on a routine basis, and had his major league debut at PNC Park when the Pirates hosted the Chicago Cubs. Now, his if there were any jitters in his opener, which we'll talk about here in a second, they were quickly resolved with his next outing yesterday, being Saturday the 17th. Now, Skenes was signed to a $9.2 million signing bonus, which was the largest for a player ever drafted in the MLB amateur draft. His salary for this year is only 1 year at $740,000, but his adjusted salary comes out to about $561,000, give or take here. The first outing for Skenes, he only ended up going 4 innings, but he did strike out several batters. He threw 84 pitches and gave up 3 earned runs. Gave up a home run, walked a couple of batters. His ERA was 6.75 by the time he was pulled by Pittsburgh manager Derek Shelton, and it ended up being a no decision, where the Pirates eventually ended up coming back and winning on the strength of 5 home runs. They won 10-9 against their rival, the Chicago Cubs. Now, flash forward to yesterday, you got Friday afternoon baseball at Wrigley, which are some of the best words in all of sports. Whether you love or hate the Cubs, afternoon baseball is always a great thing. Typically, you get afternoon baseball on a getaway day for most teams. They'll be on Thursdays, but it's pretty rare to actually have an afternoon matinee on a Friday unless you're on the South Side in Chicago. The outing that Skenes put together, any of those jitters were completely gone. Skenes struck out 11 yesterday, including the first 7 batters he faced. In fact, the first base runner that he allowed was Michael Busch in the bottom of the 5th. And the Cubs ended up putting 3 on the board in the 8th, but Pittsburgh was already up 9-0, and this means that the 22-year-old rookie was on track to get his first major league victory, which he ended up doing. He threw 100 pitches, and 17 of those were clocked over. On the debut of May 11th, 17 of his pitches were clocked over 100. He clocked 12 yesterday, and the final one was a strikeout of Mike Tauchman, which was the final strikeout of the day. This is the 6th time that Pittsburgh has had the number 1 overall pick, and actually that ended up breaking a tie with the Mets, the Astros, and the Padres. And 7 teams have never had the overall selection. It would have been 8, but the Cleveland Guardians won the first ever Major League Baseball draft lottery, meaning that they now have the first pick and can take their name off this list later on this summer. Now, going back to Henry Davis, who they took number 1 overall a couple of years ago, Davis has only hit .201 thus far, and he's only got 1 home run and 28 RBIs, and the Pirates actually sent him down to Indianapolis on May 4th. Whether Skenes is going to stay up, let's actually see how he performs now that he's facing somebody other than the Cubs. So you have jitters being, home crowd, first overall pick against an upstart Cubs team. You face that same team just a few days later. You're spot in the rotation, so you're familiar with them, but you're in their territory. You're in a hitter-friendly ballpark, but it's a little bit more familiarity where he was able to rack up those level of numbers. Now, the concern that you absolutely have to have with Skenes is you want to make sure that if he's going to be your ace, you have to tell him to stay off the fastball a little bit, and then you can actually start to develop some of his other pitches, because this is where we've seen Atlanta's Spencer Strider, Cleveland Shane Bieber, Miami's Yuri Perez. They're all lost for the season with elbow surgeries. Now, Strider did evade Tommy John. He should be ready for the start of next year. Bieber and Perez had Tommy John. They'll be lucky if they're ready by the All-Star game next year. And then you actually had Steven Strasburg, who just retired in the offseason, who was a former number one pick, was the 2009 World Series MVP, which is still to date the Nationals' only World Series championship. He had 2 surgeries, was never himself, hasn't pitched in a number of years, and finally retired. All of these guys, with the exception of Bieber, are pretty hard throwers. Now, Bieber is a very, very kind of throwback to like a John Smoltz, a Greg Maddux. His fastball may hit in the low to mid 90s. It's not going to hit. It's not really going to get all the way up there. But Bieber is such a master around the plate. He with his curveball, his off-speed pitches, he's able to be a lot more effective. He's more of a ground ball pitcher than a power pitcher, where a lot of these guys are. Skenes has also got to establish that he's a starter, but he's throwing like he's a closer. Now, Randy Johnson had the frame where he can go out and he could throw gas, but Johnson also was, because of his size, he could put a lot more torque on the ball. So that's why one of his sliders would be in the mid 90s. That's why his off-speed pitches, would be in the mid to upper 80s at that point. So the bigger the frame, the more torque and spin you're able to put on the ball. I don't think with his kind of size he's going to need to do, something like what we saw Blanco do with the Astros, where he's going to have to doctor the ball, so to speak, or put stuff on the ball. But this is very promising for the Pittsburgh Pirates. That realistically, I think baseball is a little bit better when some of these smaller market teams are a little bit more successful. And Mike and I will probably talk about this on the Wise Guy Sports Show later on tonight. Cleveland has constantly broke the mold in the last 10 years of being a smaller market team that gets to the playoffs on a relatively routine basis. Minnesota is still a relatively smaller market in terms of baseball, even though they're a larger market on the grand scale. And the Twins getting to the postseason last year. Tampa Bay has gone from having the worst stadium in all of baseball in one of these smaller markets and kind of a novelty idea, and they have actually turned into a perennial American League contender, certainly in the American League East. You have, Pittsburgh and Milwaukee are like that in the NL Central. We saw the Arizona Diamondbacks, who were kind of in the same market or same scenario as the Twins. Bigger markets in the overall scheme, smaller market on the scale of Major League Baseball, get all the way to the World Series last year. So for Pittsburgh to kind of get this young talent in, and yeah, they've brought back Andrew McCutchen. Good story there. But with McCutchen being above 35 now, how much longer has he really got? It's kind of a novelty thing. It's like it's kind of the equivalent of the St. Louis Cardinals bringing back Matt Carpenter, or if the Cleveland Guardians were to bring back even right now, bringing back Carlos Carrasco, who's on the back end of his career, and you're just trying to squeeze whatever you can out of them. But Skenes, he's got to be living life right now. He had his major league debut at 21 years old. He went out and got his first win in Wrigley Field. He got signed to a nearly $10 million signing bonus before he even threw a pitch. He's basically become the future face of one of the more storied franchises in all of baseball and one of the more historic teams. And he's also dating the most marketable and probably popular female athlete in the NCAA. And no, it's not Caitlin Clark. And Caitlin Clark is now officially a professional, so her name kind of comes off that list. But before Caitlin Clark really kind of progressed last year, that title went to LSU gymnast Olivia, aka Livy Dunn. Now, Dunn is a social media personality. She's been a 4-year member of the LSU gymnastics team. She's got more than 13 million followers between TikTok and Instagram. She's created quite a bit of controversy for the fans that have actually started following her to events, not actually out of her own creation though, because of her look and her and her social media influence, so to speak. Now, don't get me wrong, Olivia Dunn, 21 years old, very attractive young lady. You can actually see where she's going to kind of garner that level of attention, especially using the social media to her advantage, and also has created. She was the first female athlete to be signed to an NCAA NIL deal, to where she was actually making 7 figures, and has over $3 million worth of NIL deals as of July of last year. She's actually got sponsorships with Gatorade, Grubhub, and oh yeah, she was just actually named as one of the models for the 60th anniversary of the Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue that hits shelves here in the next few weeks. Some of the pictures have already come out online, and you know, her subscribership just continues to grow. So she's also now thrown into the baseball wives and girlfriends category. So she's already so Skenes has already kind of got a leg up on some of the other players. Although for myself, he's got a long way to go before he reaches Justin Verlander, Kate Upton levels. She's still the benchmark, but this actually it could kind of be the equivalent of the next baseball power couple, so to speak. She's killing it at LSU. He's out of the chute hot here in Pittsburgh. Let's actually see what happens. Let's see him get a few more starts under his belt, and let's actually see if this might kind of jumpstart and put a charge into the Pirates to be able to contend a little bit. The Pirates have not made the playoffs in several years, and it would be nice to actually see them playing baseball in PNC when the fall comes around. So let me know what you guys think. Is Skenes going to be the next breakout pitcher? Does he need to scale things back a little bit? Do you actually think that the Pirates keep him up all year? Do you think that they bring him down, kind of let him work on his off-speed pitches, or figure out a better way to throw the heavy stuff without ruining his elbow? But again, Mike and I will be with you guys later on tonight for the Wise Guys, and I will be back with you guys here possibly as early as tomorrow with another story that seemed to get a lot of headlines, and I have to get my take out on there, but we will cover that on the Wise Guys tonight. Take care.